There is a country in northern Europe where ancient forests outnumber people 10 to 1, where medieval towers cast shadows over streets that have barely changed in 600 years, yet every citizen can vote online from their smartphone, where the air is so clean that the World Health Organization ranks it among the purest on Earth. This is Estonia. A land of bogs and tech unicorns, of singing revolutions and silent saunas, of a people who have endured centuries of foreign rule and emerged with one of the most advanced digital societies on the planet. Most travelers race through the Baltic states in a weekend, ticking off Tallinn's old town before boarding a ferry to Helsinki or Stockholm. They see the cobblestones and the copper spires, and they leave thinking they have seen Estonia. But they have not met the Estonia that wakes before dawn, to walk through mist-covered bogs in Soomaa National Park. They have not tasted the slow fermented black bread that a grandmother in Soomaa has been baking the same way for 60 years. They have not heard 30,000 voices rising as one at the Song Festival grounds in Tallinn, singing a nation into existence. This is the story of how people actually live in Estonia. Not the postcard version, not the digital hype, but the quiet, resilient, deeply rooted daily life that unfolds across this small Baltic republic. From the tech campuses of Ülemiste city to the wooden farmhouses of Võrumaa, from the Russian-speaking streets of Narva to the windswept beaches of Saaremaa, Estonia reveals itself not in monuments, but in moments. If you enjoy discovering how people truly live around the world, hit subscribe now. There is a whole planet of stories waiting for you, and we are just getting started. Estonia sits at the crossroads of Scandinavia, Russia, and the Baltic Sea, a position that has shaped its fate for 1,000 years. It is small by any measure. With roughly 1.3 million people spread across an area similar to the Netherlands, Estonia is one of the least densely populated countries in Europe. More than half the land is covered by forest. Another fifth is marsh, bog, or wetland. The islands alone, over 2,000 of them, could take a lifetime to explore. The Baltic Sea defines the northern and western edges of this country. Along the coast, limestone cliffs rise dramatically at places like Ontika in the northeast, where the Baltic Clint, a geological formation stretching hundreds of kilometers, meets the water in a sheer drop. In winter, the sea freezes in sheltered bays around Haapsalu, and locals walk across ice thick enough to hold a car. By summer, the same shores transform into reed-lined beaches where the water, though never truly warm, invites the brave to swim under a sky that barely darkens at night. Travel inland, and the landscape shifts. The bogs of Soomaa National Park stretch across the southwest in a vast, peaty wilderness. In spring, when snowmelt swells the rivers, Soomaa experiences what locals call the fifth season, a flood that submerges roads, forests, and meadows, turning the park into a labyrinth of mirrored water. People navigate it by canoe, paddling between birch trees that seem to grow straight out of a lake. The silence here is almost absolute, broken only by the cry of a crane or the distant drumming of a black woodpecker. Further south, around Otepää, the land rises into gentle hills, modest by global standards, but dramatic enough to earn the title of Estonia's winter capital. Cross-country skiers glide through pine forests dusted with snow, while in summer, the same trails host hikers climbing to the top of Väike-Munamägi, Estonia's modest, highest peak at just over 300 meters. The lack of towering mountains does not diminish the beauty. It gives the land an intimacy, a sense that these forests and lakes are within reach, meant to be walked through rather than admired from a distance. The islands tell their own story. Saaremaa, the largest, is a world apart. Its juniper-covered fields, windmills, and limestone churches feel suspended in a quieter century. Hiiumaa, smaller and even more remote, is where Estonians themselves go when they want to disappear. The ferry journey from the mainland is a ritual transition, a slow separation from the pace of modern life into a place where lighthouses outnumber traffic lights. In Estonia, nature is not a destination. It is the backdrop to everything. Even in Tallinn, the capital, you are never more than 15 minutes from a forest trail. This proximity to wilderness does not just shape the landscape, it shapes the Estonian soul. Quiet, observant, patient, these are qualities forged by long winters and deep woods. Morning in Tallinn begins early, but not frantically. By 7 o'clock, trams glide almost silently along the tracks in Kalamaja, the old wooden house district turned creative quarter. Commuters swipe their transit cards, or more likely, they do nothing at all, because public transport for registered residents in Tallinn has been free for over a decade. It is a small policy that says something large about how this city values its citizens. The rhythm of the day unfolds differently depending on where you are. In Tallinn's city centre, office workers stream into glass-walled tech headquarters. TransferWise, Bolt, Skype, names born here that now belong to the world. In Tartu, the university city 2 hours south, students cycle along the Emajogi River, the wheels of their bicycles clattering over cobblestones, worn smooth by generations of scholars. Estonia's oldest and most prestigious university, the University of Tartu, gives this city its pulse, a youthful energy, a sense of intellectual curiosity that spills from lecture halls into the cozy cafes of the Supelin neighborhood. In the countryside, the day starts differently. On the island of Muhu, a fisherman checks his nets at sunrise, the Baltic still pale and misty. In the small town of Viljandi, a baker slides trays of rye bread into a wood-fired oven. The same recipe her grandmother used before the Soviet occupation, before the wars, before any of the turbulence that shaped modern Estonia. These rhythms have not changed much in centuries, and that continuity matters here. What visitors notice quickly is the quiet. Estonians do not fill silence with small talk. An elevator ride in Tallinn can pass without a single word exchanged, and this is not rudeness. It is respect for personal space, for brevity, for the belief that words should be spent carefully. That said, the quiet exterior masks a dry, sharp wit. Estonians laugh with their eyes before their mouths. Once trust is earned, the warmth is genuine and deep. The afternoon brings a pause. In offices across Tallinn and Tartu, work slows for lunch. A proper lunch, often a hot meal, not a sandwich at a desk, salads of pickled vegetables, hearty soups, dark bread with butter. Then the rhythm picks up again. Work continuing until 5 or 6, after which the evening belongs to family, to forest walks, to the sauna. As dusk falls, and in winter, dusk falls by 3 in the afternoon, windows glow warm across the city and countryside. The Estonian evening is a retreat inward. It is time spent at home. It is, for many, the best part of the day. The Estonian home is a sanctuary. This is not a culture of open doors and spontaneous visits. When an Estonian invites you into their house, it is a gesture of real trust, and you will find the space impeccably kept. Shoes left at the entrance, rooms orderly, a sense of calm intentionality. In Tallinn, most people live in apartments. The Soviet-era concrete blocks of Lasnamäe, the city's largest district, house nearly a quarter of the capital's population. From the outside, these grey rectilinear buildings can look bleak. A legacy of mass housing constructed in the 1970s and 1980s. Step inside, however, and you see how Estonians have transformed these spaces. Interiors are modern, warm, often beautifully designed, minimalist but with natural materials, light wood, clean lines, a stark contrast between exterior and interior that captures something essential about Estonian life. What matters is on the inside. In the wooden house neighborhoods of Kalamaja and Kadriorg, Tallinn shows a different face. Here, pastel-colored houses with steep roofs and carved window frames line quiet streets. Many have stood for over 100 years, surviving wars and occupations. Today, they are among the most desirable addresses in the country, close to the city but preserving the feel of a village, with gardens where apple trees and currant bushes remind residents of their rural roots. Further from the capital, in the farm country of Võrumaa in the southeast, the traditional Estonian farmstead lives on, adapted to modern life. A cluster of buildings, the main house, a sauna, perhaps a barn, set among fields and forest. Families here often have deep roots, the same surname appearing in parish records going back centuries. The connection to the land is not romanticized, it is practical and ongoing. People grow their own potatoes and cucumbers. They forage for mushrooms and berries in the forest. This is not a hobby. For many, especially older generations, it is how you eat through the winter. Estonian families are small by global standards. The birth rate is low, and households often center on 1 or 2 children. But the family unit is tight. Grandparents play an active role in childcare. It is common to see a grandmother pushing a pram through Tallinn's Kadriorg Park, or a grandfather teaching a child to fish from the pier at Kihnu. Divorce rates are relatively high, yet extended family bonds remain strong. Estonians may be reserved in public, but within their homes and among their relatives, the emotional life of the country unfolds. Technology runs through the home in ways both visible and invisible. Nearly every household has fast internet. Tax returns are filed online in minutes. Parents track their children's school grades through a national e-school system. Yet alongside all this, the fireplace or wood-burning stove remains the heart of many homes, a reminder that modernity in Estonia wears a comfortable, traditional coat. Estonian food tells the story of a northern people shaped by scarcity, seasons, and survival. It is not flashy. It does not announce itself with spice or spectacle. But to eat well in Estonia is to taste the land itself. The dark richness of forest mushrooms, the clean salt of Baltic herring, the dense, slightly sour depth of rye bread baked for hours at low heat. Rye bread is the foundation of the Estonian table. Dark, dense, and faintly sweet, from a long, slow fermentation, it appears at nearly every meal. In bakeries around Tallinn's Teleskivi Creative City, young artisans are reviving ancient grain recipes, but the most revered loaves still come from small rural bakeries, places like Muhu on Muhu Island, where bread is baked in a wood-fired oven using techniques passed down through families for generations. The Baltic Sea provides herring, sprat, pike perch, fish that are smoked, salted, or simply pan-fried and served with boiled potatoes and dill. On the piers of the small fishing villages along Lake Peipus on the eastern border, old believers from the Russian Orthodox community sell smoked bream and vendus, a tradition that goes back centuries. The lake, one of Europe's largest, has sustained these communities since long before Estonia was a country. In Saaremaa, a distinct cultural region in the southeast, the cuisine takes on a character all its own. Seto women in traditional embroidered dress serve suia, a pressed curd cheese flavored with caraway, alongside honey from local apiaries. The Seto people have preserved a unique language, a polyphonic singing tradition recognized by UNESCO, and a cuisine that bridges Estonian and Russian influences in ways that feel entirely natural. The modern Estonian food scene is concentrated in Tallinn, where restaurants like Noa and Fotografiska have earned international recognition. Young chefs trained in Copenhagen and Stockholm have returned home to reinterpret Estonian ingredients through a Nordic lens: foraged herbs, cured game, fermented vegetables. Tallinn's Old Town, with its medieval merchant houses and candlelit cellars, provides a theatrical backdrop for a cuisine that is increasingly confident and inventive. But food culture in Estonia is also deeply domestic. In summer, families gather at garden plots, small allotments on the edges of cities where urban Estonians grow strawberries, tomatoes, and herbs. The short growing season makes everything taste more urgent, more precious. A sun-warmed strawberry picked in July carries the memory of a long, dark winter, and that is exactly the point. Estonia has earned its nickname, e-Estonia. It is the most digitally advanced society in the world by many measures, a country where 99% of government services are available online, where company registration takes 15 minutes, and where citizens can vote in national elections from their living rooms. This digital infrastructure is not a gimmick. It is the backbone of an economy that has transformed itself from post-Soviet collapse into one of Europe's most dynamic. Tallinn's Ülemiste city is the epicenter of this transformation. Once an industrial zone, it is now a campus-style business park, where tech companies, startups, and international firms cluster around landscaped courtyards. Skype was built here. Bolt, the ride-hailing and micro-mobility platform, now operating across Europe and Africa, was born in a small Tallinn apartment and now employs thousands. Estonia produces more startups per capita than any other country in Europe, a statistic that still surprises people who imagine the country as a quiet backwater. But the tech story is not the whole story. Away from the glass facades of Ülemiste, Estonia's economy is built on timber, manufacturing, and agriculture. In the forests around Võru and Põlva, logging trucks rumble down narrow roads, feeding sawmills that export wood products across Europe. In the industrial zones of Võrumaa in the northeast, the legacy of Soviet-era oil shale mining lingers, a heavy polluting industry that employs thousands but faces an uncertain future as Estonia pushes toward carbon neutrality. The average salary in Estonia has risen steadily since independence, but it remains lower than in Western Europe. For many Estonians, particularly outside Tallinn and Tartu, making ends meet requires resourcefulness. People supplement their income by foraging and selling wild mushrooms and berries to processors. They grow their own food. They fix things themselves. This is not poverty. It is a cultural preference for self-sufficiency that the Soviet era paradoxically reinforced rather than destroyed. In Tartu, the university drives a different kind of economy, one built on research, education, and healthcare. The Tartu University Hospital is the largest employer in southern Estonia, and the city's biotech sector is growing steadily. Students from across Europe and beyond come to study here, drawn by relatively low tuition fees and a high quality of life. Work culture in Estonia is results-oriented rather than performative. Long hours are less valued than efficiency. Meetings are short and direct. Estonians do not waste time on pleasantries when there is work to be done. A handshake seals a deal, and contracts, though increasingly digital, are expected to be honored. There is a quiet professionalism here, a Nordic sensibility that values competence over charisma. To understand Estonian social life, you must first understand the sauna. Not the spa version, not the hotel wellness center. The real Estonian sauna, a small wooden building, often by a lake or river, heated by a wood-burning stove. The sauna is where Estonians shed their reserve, along with their clothes. It is where deals are made, where family disputes are settled, where the deepest conversations unfold in the steamy, dim light. In the countryside around Otepää and Võrumaa, the smoke-sauna, suitsusan, is a UNESCO-protected tradition. There is no chimney. The smoke from the wood fire fills the room, blackening the walls before being vented out. What remains is a gentle, lingering heat, unlike any other. Bathers beat themselves with birch whisks, vite, to stimulate circulation, then plunge into a cold lake or roll in the snow. It sounds punishing. It is, in fact, transcendent. The greatest expression of Estonian collective identity is the song festival, Laulupidu. Every 5 years, tens of thousands of singers gather at the Tallinn Song Festival grounds, a vast outdoor amphitheater built during the Soviet era. The combined choirs, sometimes 30,000 voices strong, perform traditional and contemporary Estonian music before an audience of nearly 100,000. To witness it is to understand something essential about this nation. That singing is not entertainment here. Singing is how Estonia survived. In 1988, during what became known as the Singing Revolution, hundreds of thousands of Estonians gathered at these same grounds to sing patriotic songs that had been banned under Soviet rule. They did not throw stones. They did not burn buildings. They sang, and the Soviet Union, for all its tanks and soldiers, could not silence them. Estonia's independence, restored in 1991, was won in part through a revolution of voices. Jaanipäev, Midsummer, is the other great Estonian celebration. On the night of June 23rd, the shortest night of the year, bonfires blaze across the country. On the beaches of Saaremaa, on the shores of Lake Peipus, in the fields of every rural parish, Estonians gather to drink, dance, and wait for a dawn that barely arrives before the sun rises again. Young couples jump over the dying embers for luck. Old friends share stories they have told every midsummer for decades. It is a pagan tradition that Christianity and communism both failed to extinguish. Beyond these grand festivals, daily social life is understated. Estonians value solitude and nature over crowded social calendars. A perfect weekend might involve a solitary walk through the bogs of Muhu National Park, a sauna with close family, and an early night. The culture does not pressure people toward constant socializing. There is dignity, Estonians believe, in quietness. There is strength in not needing to fill every silence. Life in Estonia is not without its shadows, and to tell only the bright story would be dishonest. The challenges Estonians face are real, and they shape the national character as much as the triumphs do. Winter is perhaps the most immediate an inescapable challenge. From November through March, daylight is scarce. In Tallinn, the sun rises after 9 in the morning and sets before 4 in the afternoon during the darkest weeks. In the countryside, the darkness feels even deeper, the isolation more acute. Seasonal depression affects a significant portion of the population. Estonians cope by embracing the darkness rather than fighting it, lighting candles, spending time in saunas, finding comfort in the coziness of home. But the weight of winter is real, and it contributes to one of the highest rates of alcohol consumption in Europe, a persistent public health concern. The legacy of Soviet occupation runs deeper than monuments and architecture. The generation that remembers deportations, the cattle trains that carried tens of thousands of Estonians to Siberian labor camps in the 1940s, is still alive. Their children and grandchildren carry that trauma in ways that are not always spoken aloud, but are never far from the surface. Trust in institutions, in neighbors, in the future. These things were deliberately broken, and rebuilding them has taken decades. Narva, the third largest city, sits on the Russian border, literally across a river from the town of Ivangorod. Over 90% of Narva's population is Russian-speaking, a legacy of Soviet-era migration that deliberately diluted Estonia's ethnic composition. The city feels like a different country. Soviet-era apartment blocks dominate the skyline. Russian television plays in most homes. The relationship between Narva and the rest of Estonia is complex, marked by language barriers, economic disparity, and the shadow of an increasingly aggressive Russia to the east. Since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, tensions have sharpened. Estonia, a NATO member, lives with the constant awareness that the border lies just a few hours' drive from Tallinn. Rural depopulation is another slow crisis. Young people leave villages in Võrumaa, Põlvamaa, and the islands for Tallinn, Tartu, or Helsinki. Schools close, services shrink. The countryside is beautiful, but increasingly empty. Estonia's population has barely grown in 30 years, and in some regions it has fallen sharply. The country faces the same demographic pressures as much of Eastern Europe: low birth rates, emigration, an aging population. Yet Estonians do not respond to challenges with despair. They respond with pragmatism. The darkness of winter is met with light festivals and sauna rituals. The trauma of occupation is addressed through museums, through education, through the deliberate celebration of Estonian language and culture. The threat from the east is met with a strong defense force, compulsory military service, and the quiet resolve of a people who have survived far worse. Estonia is a country living in 2 centuries at once, and the tension between the old and the new is not a source of conflict. It is the country's defining creative energy. Nowhere is this more visible than in Tallinn. Walk through the Võru Gate into the medieval Old Town, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and you step into the 14th century. Cobbled lanes wind between merchant houses with steep, gabled roofs. The spire of St. Olaf's Church, once the tallest building in the world, rises above it all. Tourists take selfies in front of the Rakoja Platz, the town hall square that has hosted markets and celebrations since the Hanseatic League dominated Baltic trade. Then walk 10 minutes north, past the railway tracks, and you enter Telliskivi Creative City, a former industrial complex transformed into a hub of galleries, design shops, craft breweries, and tech offices. Murals cover the old factory walls. A food truck sells Korean-Estonian fusion. A startup founder types code at a communal table while a DJ spins vinyl in the corner. This is 21st century Estonia in full bloom. Creative, international, unbound by the old categories. The tension between modern and traditional plays out in personal choices too. In Tallinn, young parents debate whether to send their children to an Estonian language school or an international program. Across the country, families decide whether to keep the old farmstead or sell it and move to the city. Every Estonian navigates these questions in their own way. On Kihnu Island, off the western coast, the traditional way has held firm. Kihnu's culture is matriarchal. Women have been the keepers of the island's traditions for generations, maintaining the distinctive striped skirts, the dialect, the songs, the rituals, while men spent months at sea fishing. UNESCO has recognized Kihnu's cultural space as a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. In winter, when the sea ice cuts the island off from the mainland, Kihnu feels like a world preserved in amber. The women still gather to sing the old songs, to weave the old patterns, to pass on knowledge that has survived occupations, modernization, and the relentless pull of the cities. In Tallinn, tradition survives differently, as a conscious choice, a reclamation. Young Estonians who grew up in the digital age are learning to forage for mushrooms, to bake rye bread from scratch, to play the kannel, the traditional Estonian zither. The folk music festival in Viljandi draws thousands every summer, many of them young, urban, and deeply invested in keeping the old sounds alive. Traditional does not mean backward here, it means rooted. This is perhaps the most remarkable thing about modern Estonia. It has not abandoned its past to embrace the future. It has brought the past along, integrated it, drawn strength from it. The country that gave the world Skype and e-residency also gave the world the smoke-sauna and the song festival. These are not contradictions, they are two halves of a single, coherent identity. Given all of this, the long winters, the modest salaries, the small population, the geopolitical anxiety, the question naturally arises, why do people stay? Why do Estonians who have the education, the language skills, and the EU passport to live anywhere in Europe choose to remain in this small, cold, quiet corner of the continent? The answer starts with nature, but it goes deeper than that. An Estonian who has lived for a few years in London or Berlin will tell you about the things they missed. The silence of a winter forest after fresh snow. The freedom of walking into any woods you like, picking wild blueberries straight from the bush, because every person's right to roam, igamehoigus, is enshrined in law and in culture. The cleanest air in the developed world. The knowledge that true wilderness is never more than a short drive away. In the coastal town of Kihnu, known as Estonia's summer capital, the white sand beach stretches for miles and the shallow water warms enough for swimming by July. Families return here summer after summer, generation after generation, to the same guest houses, the same stretches of sand. The continuity matters. In a country that has experienced so much rupture, so much loss, places that stay the same are precious. There is also the quiet pride of a small nation that has built something extraordinary. Estonia's transformation since 1991 is not just economic, it is psychological. A country that was told for decades that it did not exist, that its language was a dialect, that its culture was folkloric kitsch, has rebuilt itself into a confident, sovereign, forward-looking society. Estonians are not loud about this pride, but it runs deep. You see it in the way people talk about their digital infrastructure, their education system, their clean environment, not with boastfulness, but with a calm, undeniable sense of having earned something. For many, the reason to stay is simply that Estonia is home in a way that nowhere else could be. The forest paths you walked as a child, the sauna your grandfather built, the particular quality of summer light at 10 in the evening, when the sky is still bright and the air smells of pine and cut grass. These things cannot be replicated. They do not need to be. Estonia is not for everyone, and Estonians do not try to convince you otherwise. They are not salespeople for their own country. They will tell you honestly about the darkness and the cold and the reserve. But if you stay long enough, if you earn the trust, if you learn to hear what is being said in the silences, you begin to understand. This is a country that has endured everything history could throw at it. And it did not just survive. It built beauty from the ruins, innovation from the isolation, dignity from the darkness. If this journey through Estonia has opened a window into a world you did not know, then this channel exists for you. Hit subscribe and let us keep exploring. One country, one culture, one hidden corner of the planet at a time. Explore more, worry less.